Astronomers pointed a brand new telescope at a galaxy that's been photographed thousands of times before, expecting nothing more than a routine test image. Instead, sitting right there in that very first picture was a faint trail of light nobody had ever documented, evidence that this well-known galaxy had quietly torn apart a smaller one and nobody had noticed until now. Stick around, because I'm about to walk you through exactly what the Vera Rubin Observatory found in its very first images, why this discovery genuinely surprised the astronomers who made it, and what else this telescope has already started turning up before its official 10-year survey has even fully begun. And hit subscribe now, because this channel breaks down real space discoveries without the exaggeration, and Rubin's mission is still only getting started. Let's start with the telescope itself, because understanding what makes it different explains why it keeps finding things nobody expected. The Vera C Rubin Observatory sits atop Cerro Pachon in Chile, home to an 8.4-meter telescope feeding into the largest digital camera ever built, roughly the size of a small car, containing more than 3 billion pixels. Rather than pointing carefully at one target for a long exposure the way most telescopes do, Rubin is designed to scan the entire visible southern sky repeatedly every few nights for the next 10 years as part of a project called the Legacy Survey of Space and Time. Officials involved with the project have said plainly that Rubin will capture more information about the universe than every optical telescope throughout all of human history combined. The observatory is named after Vera Rubin, the American astronomer whose careful observations of galaxy rotation in the 1970s and 1980s provided some of the strongest early evidence that dark matter exists at all. Noticing that stars at the outer edges of spiral galaxies were orbiting far faster than the visible matter in those galaxies could explain on its own. That legacy makes it fitting that this particular observatory keeps turning up faint, previously invisible structures, since so much of its scientific mission depends on detecting exactly the kind of subtle signals that simpler instruments have always struggled to catch. It's worth understanding just how much more sensitive Rubin actually is compared to what came before it, since that sensitivity is really the common thread running through every unexpected find this telescope has already produced. Its wide field of view covers a patch of sky roughly equivalent to 45 full moons placed side by side, while still maintaining the resolution needed to pick out fine detail within that enormous frame. Combining a field of view that large with a mirror and camera sensitive enough to detect extremely faint light sources is a combination very few instruments in the history of astronomy have ever managed to achieve simultaneously, and it's exactly that combination that keeps surfacing. Features other telescopes, pointed at smaller patches of sky or working with less sensitive equipment, had simply never been able to see clearly before. If you're the kind of person who wants space discoveries explained clearly instead of buried in jargon, go ahead and drop a like on this video right now, because it genuinely helps this kind of content reach more people who would enjoy it. Rubin's very first public images were released on June 23, 2025, giving the world its first real glimpse of what this telescope could do. Captured during just over 10 hours of test observations, before the main survey had even formally begun, the images already contain millions of galaxies and Milky Way stars, along with thousands of previously undiscovered asteroids. But it was one specific image, showing the well-studied galaxy Messier 61, that produced the discovery nobody was actually looking for. Astronomers examining that test image noticed a faint trail of light extending out from Messier 61, a feature called a stellar stream. According to Sarah Pearson, an astrophysicist at the University of Copenhagen who studies these formations, this was the first stellar stream ever detected by Rubin, and it was found essentially by accident, sitting inside a test image captured before the observatory's official science mission had even started. The stream stretches an estimated 55 kiloparsecs, roughly 180,000 light-years long, making it one of the longer stellar streams ever documented. And researchers believe it most likely formed when Messier 61's gravity gradually tore apart a much smaller dwarf galaxy that wandered too close. If you found this as fascinating as I did while researching it, drop a comment letting me know, because it genuinely helps me figure out what other space stories are worth covering next. Here's what makes this discovery genuinely surprising, rather than just a nice picture. Messier 61 is not some obscure, rarely studied galaxy. It's a well-known spiral galaxy that astronomers have photographed and studied for decades. According to Aaron Romanowski, an astronomer involved in analyzing the find, despite all of that intense prior study, nobody had ever spotted this particular stellar stream before Rubin's test image revealed it clearly. That's a genuinely significant statement about just how much fainter, more subtle structure has been sitting undetected around even the most familiar, most photographed galaxies in the night sky, simply waiting for an instrument sensitive enough to actually pick it out from the background noise. Stellar streams themselves are worth understanding a bit better, since they represent a genuinely important tool for studying how galaxies grow and evolve over cosmic time. When a smaller galaxy passes too close to a much larger one, the larger galaxy's gravity gradually stretches and tears the smaller one apart over the course of many orbits, spreading its stars out into a long, thin, ribbon-like trail that can persist and remain visible for billions of years after the smaller galaxy has been fully absorbed. Studying these streams gives astronomers a kind of fossil record of galactic mergers, letting them reconstruct how a galaxy like Messier 61 grew to its current size by consuming smaller neighboring galaxies over its long history. Because these streams are so faint, spread thin across such a wide area of sky, they've historically been extraordinarily difficult to detect without extremely deep, wide-field imaging, exactly the kind of imaging Rubin was specifically built to provide. The scientific implications go beyond just finding one more stream around one more galaxy. Researchers studying galaxy formation broadly expect that essentially every galaxy should be surrounded by these kinds of faint stellar streams, the scattered remains of smaller galaxies, consumed over billions of years of gravitational interaction. If that expectation holds true, the fact that nobody had found this particular stream around a galaxy as well studied as Messier 61 says less about that galaxy being unusual and more about how difficult these features have simply been to detect using previous generations of telescopes. Pearson herself described the find as just a precursor for all of the many, many similar features Rubin is expected to reveal over the course of its full survey. This single early discovery essentially previews a genuinely new field of study, cataloging faint galactic cannibalism signatures across thousands of galaxies that were previously considered too faint to examine this closely. That wasn't the only unexpected result to come out of Rubin's earliest test observations either. Over 9 nights in April and May 2025, before the official first images were even released, engineers ran a test survey covering much of the Virgo galaxy cluster, producing 1,185 images across 3 visible wavelength filters. During that same engineering test, astronomers using the data discovered 3 main belt asteroids rotating once every couple of minutes, remarkably fast T-spinners. A handful of similarly fast rotating asteroids had been found before among near-Earth objects, smaller bodies passing relatively close to our planet. But Rubin's discoveries were considerably larger and considerably more distant, sitting out in the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a genuinely unusual place to find rotation rates this extreme. Individual test images from that same 9-night campaign had a limiting magnitude of around 24, roughly comparable to the sensitivity of other established survey telescopes. But when all of the images were combined together, or co-added, the resulting depth reached magnitude 26.5, roughly 10 times fainter than any single exposure could achieve on its own, exactly the kind of layered cumulative sensitivity that makes catching subtle signals like rapid asteroid rotation possible in the first place. Then, in January 2026, Rubin topped even that finding. A team of astronomers led by Sarah Greenstreet announced the discovery of the fastest ever spinning asteroid with a diameter over half a kilometer found through H-analysis of Rubin's data. According to Neuer Lab, this specific feat was uniquely enabled by Rubin's particular combination of sensitivity and rapid, repeated imaging cadence, since catching an object rotating, that quickly requires taking multiple images close enough together in time to actually track the brightness changes as different faces of the elongated asteroid rotate into view. An elongated body presents alternately larger and smaller faces to any observer as it spins, dimming and brightening twice during each full rotation, and Rubin's imaging pattern turned out to be exactly what was needed to catch that signature clearly for an object this size and this distant. This asteroid discovery matters for reasons beyond simply setting a new speed record. According to researchers involved with the finding, studying how fast an asteroid can spin before it starts flying apart provides genuine insight into what these objects are actually made of internally, whether they're solid, coherent bodies, or loosely bound piles of rubble held together, mostly by weak mutual gravity. An asteroid spinning as fast as this one likely needs genuine internal cohesive strength to avoid tearing itself apart. Under the centrifugal force involved, information that helps researchers understand asteroid composition and evolution more broadly across the wider population of similar objects still waiting to be discovered. There's a well-established physical limit involved here that makes this particular discovery genuinely puzzling. Asteroids held together loosely, essentially rubble piles, bound only by their own weak gravity rather than any real structural strength, can only spin so fast before centrifugal force literally flings material off their surface, a threshold researchers sometimes call the rubble pile spin barrier. finding an object over half a kilometer across, spinning fast enough to approach or potentially exceed that theoretical limit, suggests it must have genuine internal cohesion, actual structural strength holding it together, rather than being a loose aggregate of smaller rocks. That's a meaningfully different category of object, and finding one this large, spinning this quickly raises real questions about how common, genuinely solid, coherent asteroids actually are throughout the main belt, compared to the more commonly assumed rubble pile structure many similarly sized objects are thought to have. Rubin's official alert system marked its own historic milestone shortly after, on February 24, 2026, when the observatory issued 800,000 separate alerts in a single night, automatically flagging new asteroids, supernovae, active galactic nuclei, and variable stars whose brightness shifts over time. According to Stephen Smart of the University of Oxford, who serves as scientific lead for one of the systems built to help, astronomers sift through this incoming flood of data. Everything that changed, appeared, or disappeared in that observed patch of sky got cataloged and triggered an alert automatically. Once Rubin's full survey formally began, that alert volume was expected to climb to as many as 7 million notifications every single night, along with roughly 20 terabytes of fresh data, an amount of information with genuinely no precedent in the history of astronomy. Handling that volume of alerts required building an entirely new kind of scientific infrastructure alongside the telescope itself. Rather than expecting individual astronomers to manually sift through millions of nightly notifications, Rubin's alert stream feeds into a network of automated software systems called brokers, each designed to filter, classify, and prioritize incoming alerts based on different scientific criteria. LSST, the specific broker Smart works on, represents just one of 7 such systems currently operating, each one built by a different research team with slightly different priorities, whether that's flagging potential supernovae for immediate spectroscopic follow-up, tracking solar system objects for orbit determination, or watching for the specific brightness signatures associated with gravitational wave counterparts. That entire ecosystem of automated tools had to be built, tested, and refined well before Rubin's official survey ever began, precisely because no human team could possibly review 7 million individual alerts every single night without this kind of automated triage happening first. Perhaps the most striking example of Rubin finding something nobody expected came from research that wasn't even planned as a discovery at all, but as an act of retroactive scientific archaeology. When the interstellar comet 3I Atlas was formally discovered by a different survey system in July 2025, researchers immediately began searching through archival data from every available telescope, hoping to find earlier, undiscovered images of the comet taken before anyone realized what it actually was. A team, led by Colin Orion Chandler, went digging through Rubin's own commissioning data, the same rigorous testing phase the observatory was undergoing to prepare for its official survey, and found exactly what they were looking for. Rubin had already photographed 3I Atlas on July 3, 2025, during routine engineering tests, before the comet had even been formally announced to the world by anyone else. This kind of retroactive search, astronomers call it a pre-covery search, has become a standard part of studying any newly discovered object, since finding earlier images taken before the official discovery date can dramatically improve how precisely researchers can calculate an object's orbit. The longer the observation baseline, meaning the more time separates the earliest and most recent images of the same object, the more accurately its trajectory through space can be calculated. For an object as rare and scientifically valuable as an interstellar comet, finding even a single additional set of images from weeks before the official discovery genuinely matters, refining calculations that every other research team studying the comet would go on to rely on. Analyzing those images required real ingenuity from Chandler's team, since Rubin's specific data processing pipeline for handling fast-moving solar system objects wasn't even fully operational, yet at the time, those test images were captured. The team had to develop custom techniques specifically to work around that limitation, but the effort paid off. Using this unplanned early data, researchers successfully made precise position measurements, collected detailed brightness data, helped refine the comet's orbital calculations, and studied the structure of its nucleus, all from images that were never meant to be part of any formal scientific observation in the first place. Their results were published in the Astrophysical Journal Letters in 2026, turning what had originally just been routine equipment testing into a genuine scientific contribution to one of the most closely watched astronomical events of the entire year. That pattern, a telescope built and tested for our one specific purpose, repeatedly turning up scientifically valuable, genuinely unexpected results along the way, says something important about what makes Rubin's fundamental design so powerful, because it captures such an enormous field of view with such extraordinary sensitivity and repeated coverage. Almost anything that happens to be sitting in front of its camera during any given exposure becomes fair game for discovery, regardless of what the observation was originally intended to accomplish. A routine engineering test over the Virgo cluster turned up record-breaking asteroids. A first-look test image of a familiar galaxy revealed an entirely unknown stellar stream. Commissioning data captured months before the official survey began ended up providing crucial early observations of one of the rarest astronomical objects ever confirmed, an interstellar comet. It's worth appreciating just how early in Rubin's overall mission all of these discoveries happened. Every single one of these findings, the Messier 61 stellar stream, the fast-spinning asteroids, the 3I Atlas precovery, images occurred before the observatory's official 10-year legacy survey of space and time had even formally begun. Rubin was still technically in its testing and commissioning phase, working through the rigorous process of confirming every system met the demanding standards required for its actual scientific mission. That a telescope, still being G-tested and calibrated, managed to produce this many genuinely newsworthy discoveries suggests the pace of unexpected findings is likely to increase substantially now that the full survey is actually underway, scanning the entire visible sky repeatedly rather than just the limited test patches used during commissioning. So what does all of this actually add up to? A telescope that spent more than 2 decades in development, wasn't even finished being tested before it started rewriting parts of what astronomers thought they already knew, revealing a hidden stellar stream around a galaxy studied for decades, uncovering asteroids spinning faster than anything previously documented at that size, and accidentally capturing the earliest known images of one of the rarest visitors our solar system has ever received. None of these discoveries were the primary goal of the observations that produced them. They were bonuses, side effects of building an instrument sensitive and thorough enough that it simply couldn't help but notice things nobody was specifically looking for. That pattern is worth sitting with for a moment, because it says something genuinely important about how scientific progress tends to actually unfold in practice. Major discoveries don't always come from carefully targeted observations designed around a specific hypothesis. Sometimes they come from simply building the most capable instrument possible, pointing it somewhere reasonable, and then paying close enough attention to notice when something in the data doesn't match what anyone expected TOC. Rubin's design philosophy, prioritizing breadth, depth, and repeated coverage over narrowly targeted observation, appears to be the odds of stumbling onto genuinely unexpected results, almost as a natural consequence of how thoroughly and how sensitively it documents everything sitting within its enormous field of view. It's also worth remembering that every single discovery covered in this video happened before Rubin's actual 10-year survey had even formally started. The observatory was still working through commissioning tests, calibration checks, and engineering trials, the kind of preparatory work that normally wouldn't be expected to produce headline-making science at all. If a telescope still being tested and fine-tuned could turn up this many genuinely newsworthy findings almost as an afterthought, it's reasonable to expect the pace of unexpected discoveries to accelerate considerably now that Rubin is actually running its full survey, scanning the entire visible southern sky repeatedly rather than working through the limited test patches used during its commissioning phase. If space discovery stories like this one, grounded in real published research and official reporting from the scientists and institutions actually running these missions, are what you want more of, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because Rubin's full 10-year survey has only just begun. And based on everything it's already turned up during testing alone, there's a very real chance the next genuinely unexpected discovery is closer than anyone thinks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.